Agriculture is a very, very capital intensive business. It takes a lot of money just to get into the game, right? To purchase equipment, to get access to land, or certainly even to buy land, or, dare I say, even to own a farm. Like these,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of capital. If you're a farmer graduating from ag school and you want to be a first generation farmer, you're not handed any land, any equipment, or you have no access to any infrastructure. How do you graduate with debt from university, but then also take on, 7 figures in more debt just to get to the point where you could go to work?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jeff.
Ben, we're finally doing this. This feels like a conversation that's long overdue.
I know. Um,
Although we have many conversations all the time about a lot of things.
it's always fun to chat and find out what's going on at Rodale, and happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So you are the CEO of the Rodale Institute, and 2 years now.
Just had my 3rd anniversary, April 24th. Yep.
Jeez, time flies.
I know. I've been with the organization for 9 years and CEO for 3. But I've been, in some ways I've been following this journey my whole life.
Yeah, it sounds like that. Why don't you go into that a little bit? How did you get here? What brought you here?
My curiosity around soil and health started, I believe, I traced it back to 7th grade recently. I grew up here in the Lehigh Valley to 2 really awesome parents, and grew up in sort of a suburban household and attended Catholic school. And in 7th grade, I had a science teacher named Mrs. Malta, who challenged the students to consider entering the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science. Fast forward to this past January, I was in my garage. I have this Tupperware bin on the lowest shelf in my garage, and I opened it up on a cold January Saturday morning and was searching through this memory box, essentially. And it's this one area of my home where I keep things from throughout my childhood. And I was leafing through it, and I came actually across the award that I received for that science project.
Oh, really?
I ended up entering PJAS and went out to Penn State University to present my project. And the project was on growing bean plants in different soil types.
Nice.
And apparently I came up with that idea to grow bean plants in Dixie cups. And there was a control and 4 variables. I remember that science project sat on the windowsill in my parents' living room for a couple of months. And every day after school, I'd come home with my little notebook and pencil, and I would take measurements of the plant growth and make recordings. And I was basically a research tech.
Fledgling soil scientist.
Yeah. And in some ways that was like a mini replica of the farming systems trial here at the Rodale Institute.
That's crazy.
I ended up winning a $100 savings bond. And
wow.
that was apparently a pretty formative moment in my life that got me on the path that I'm on today.
Nice. That's fun. Yeah. And then once you got older, you joined Rodale Press.
Yeah, the journey there actually continued. The following year, I actually had a lot of health challenges as a young boy.
Yeah.
So those were some of my earliest memories, were being in the doctor's office as a little kid.
Yeah.
And growing up in Eastern Pennsylvania, I was a child of the late 80s, early 90s, eating a lot of processed food. I had severe asthma and allergies, and I just remember being sick all the time.
Yeah.
And one day, the following year after that PJAS experiment, I was in 8th grade, and I was home from school recovering from an illness again. And an advertisement came across the television for a magazine called Men's Health.
Yeah.
And I remember being super inspired by that commercial and asked my mom to buy me a copy of Men's Health magazine the next time she went to the grocery store, to which she did. And I ended up reading that one copy of Men's Health cover to cover many, many times. And then I gave my mom another assignment. I told her that the magazine told me that if I wanted to be healthy, that I should replace all the processed foods I was eating with more natural and whole food. And so I gave her a grocery list, and I said, Mom, I want to start eating these foods. And so she brought them all home. I changed my diet. And over the next several months, I lost all this weight, got off all those medications. And little by little, I stopped having to go to the doctor. And that really set me on the path that led me to Rodale, to a company called Rodale, based in Emmaus, Pennsylvania. I joined the company the month after graduating from college in September 2001. And that was the start of the journey that I've been following for 26 years.
Because Rodale published Men's Health.
That's right. So the founder of the Rodale Institute, J.I. Rodale, many people credit him for being one of the modern day leaders of the organic farming movement. He was not a farmer. He was actually an entrepreneur from New York City. He moved out to Pennsylvania with his family because he wanted to lower his labor and overhead rates for his manufacturing company. But he also had an interest in farming and never farmed a day in his life, but he somehow connected farming with health. Like me, he had a lot of health issues as a young kid, and he wanted to safeguard his health. So when he moved his family and his business to Pennsylvania, he bought a farm not too far from where we're sitting today. And he started learning about all the latest innovations in farming. Most of those innovations involved bringing chemicals onto the farm. That would have been right around the post-World War II era. And when he was asking about these chemicals that all the farming experts were teaching him about, he had a lot of questions. And he was asking them, these experts, how these chemicals would produce healthy food, because that's what he was interested in growing. No one could answer that question, so he decided to take matters into his own hands, and he started farming with biology. He called it organic agriculture. And then he launched a magazine to tell other people how to do all the things he was learning on his farm. That magazine was called Organic Gardening, and that was his first product. And that was the launch of a very successful global publishing company that lasted over 70 years. And then along came the Rodale Institute several years later. So that was sort of the family history.
Yeah. Yeah, that's neat. As you were saying that, that almost reminds me of that biblical passage about the swords into plowshares because of the industrial agricultural industry and all the chemicals and everything that they were starting to market to farmers. And then Rodale was able to like kind of flip that on its head and focus on agriculture in a regenerative way. And so then you joined Rodale Press, and then that evolved into coming over here to Rodale Institute.
Yeah, Rodale Press was, again, it was a multinational, international publishing company that published health and wellness products, one of which was Men's Health. So that magazine that affected me as a 13-year-old was actually one of the leading products inside the company. That's what attracted me to work there. I ended up applying for an entry-level marketing position right out of college. I ended up getting that job. I spent a year working in Rodale Press's newsstand division, learning the ropes, learning the company. And that first year that I started really understanding the mission behind the companies. While I was working at the publishing company, I would go into the library. There was a library on the campus, and I would take all these old Rodale books off the shelf, and I'd take them home with me at night, and I'd read them. And I was like, when I got under the belly of really understanding the mission and reading about J.I. Rodale and his son Robert Rodale, then it was all starting to come into focus for me. I was realizing that I not only did I get a really awesome job at a really innovative health and wellness company, but there was actually a whole mission behind it. And I followed that. And eventually I found out that there was this other side called the Rodale Institute, which was a nonprofit started by the same founder. I would come out here to the farm where we're sitting today and get to know the people that worked here on my days off from the publishing company. I loved coming out here and just working alongside of the students, pulling weeds, working, in the vegetable production, wash and pack, and just learning agriculture. I just was very curious about farming. And the Rodale Institute provided me a place to follow that curiosity. Eventually, in 2015, I got asked to be a volunteer board member, which was a huge honor. And about a year into serving on the board, I decided to leave my work in publishing and ask for a job here. Jeff Moyer was our CEO at the time. Jeff was a longtime leader in the organic industry. I had deep, deep respect for him. I wanted to work for him because I felt like I could learn a lot from him. So I asked him for a job. That job paid significantly less than the job that I had been currently doing, but that was a real seminal moment for my life because I decided to say yes to a job because I was following my heart, not the money.
Yeah.
And that was a first for me in my life.
Yeah, that's cool. Maybe you could explain a little bit about what the Rodale Institute does. It's an international organization, really. You guys have influence on a global scale.
The Rodale Institute is widely known as the global leader in regenerative organic farming. J.I. Rodale, many people credit him for coining the term organic as it's used today all over the world. And then his son, Robert Rodale, coined the phrase regenerative farming. So regenerative organic is sort of the guiding North Star of everything we do.
Yeah.
In many ways, Rodale Institute is like a international university of agriculture. So just like we have a land grant system here in the United States, where every state in the nation has a university devoted to farming. Here it's Penn State in here in Pennsylvania. Rodale sort of serves as a national or even international land grant where we do the same three things as a land grant. We do long-term science, we do education and farmer training, and then we do technical assistance or consulting.
Yeah.
They call that extension, right, at the land grants. So we do the same three things, although we're devoted on advancing regenerative organic agriculture. And so we're working against the predominant system in agriculture, which would be a chemical-based system.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have some great trials that you're doing that show a lot of resilience and really kind of prove out that in the not only scientifically with this productivity of the soil and the crops, but also economically that this system can actually be more resilient for farmers and for land managers.
Yeah, Rodale Institute houses the longest running side-by-side trial in the world called the Farming Systems Trial that's studying organic and conventional agriculture. So it's looking at grain systems, which are the most farmland in America and probably around the world are growing, just a few crops,
Mhm.
corn, soybeans, maybe wheat, oats. But that trial is looking at those major crops in agriculture over a 45-year period. We've been studying how organic systems compare to conventional. That one study, which was started in 1981, is still going today. It's
Yeah.
about 600 yards to the west of where we're sitting. And that study was the major catalyst for our federal government creating the National Organic Program in 1990.
Yeah.
So what that means for you and me is that when we go to the grocery store and we see that little organic logo
Mhm.
all over the shelves of the store, it was our science that gave our federal government the confidence that organic is even a real viable system.
Yeah.
So much so that they ended up creating this federal program and legislation. And the organic seal is actually backed by the science at Rodale Institute.
That's cool. Yeah. That's really neat. And so along the way here, just recently, you wrote a book.
Yeah.
Brought it with me.
Wow.
It's I read it.
You did?
Great. Yeah. It's inspiring, really tells your story. I have something highlighted here. You said a new economy is being birthed. There's a lot of other great quotes in here, but I think that's really interesting. That's exactly basically what you're just saying with Rodale fueling that organic industry and providing the birth of a new economy for farmers and agricultural businesses to be able to pursue different avenues and think about it in, a long-term way and less just about short-term gains and short-term returns.
Yeah, well,
That's really
I have
neat.
to say, Ben, you and Kara were a very early impetus in me writing a book. I don't know if you remember that or not, but during the COVID pandemic in particular, that was a season of my life where we had just bought a home, so I planted my first garden that summer, that
Yeah.
spring rather, and I took a real interest in getting to know farmers in my community. I was just gravitated towards like I want to get to know farmers here in my community that are growing healthy food, and I think that was right around the time I met you. I had
Yeah.
heard about you. I knew about you. I knew about Wild Fox Farm and probably had bought products from you over the years, but I just was I related to you and Kara a lot.
Mhm.
And I remember writing an essay for Food Tank. Yeah. And I interviewed you a little bit. And that was sort of an early start to my writing career,
Yeah.
which I am by no means a writer or a journalist. I love to write. I love to personally write. I journal. I've been journaling most days
Yeah.
of my life for a very long time. So that early connection with you and Kara was one of the catalysts that said, maybe you have a story to tell here. Maybe you could tell stories about farmers. So that was one of the ideas for writing the book.
Yeah, there's so many stories to tell. But that's great. How was it difficult writing a book or?
I was completely intimidated by the idea of
Yeah.
writing a book. Again, I've been an avid reader most of my life, and I have a dear friend. One of my best friends in the world makes his living writing books, and
Mhm.
he's really good. He's a really good writer, and has written, I think, 5 New York Times bestsellers.
Yeah.
And he said to me one day when we were just having a casual conversation, he's like, you have a book in you. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you have a book in you. He's like, I'll help you write it. And he did. And so
Nice.
we would do these sessions. He's like, I'll just get you started. I'll just get you going, and
Yeah.
I'll show you how it's a lot easier than you think. And that's what he said. So we ended up meeting on Zoom once a week. He lives in California, and we would almost just have a conversation like this, and
Yeah.
we would record it. I actually brought my friend Caitlin into those conversations. She sort of was like the scribe or the note taker,
Yeah.
and she would she would like eavesdrop on these interviews,
Yeah.
and he would interview me and ask me stories like you're asking me, to tell stories like you're asking me. And little by little, we would shape a conversation, which became a chapter. And then I would write the chapter and I'd send it to my friend Caitlin, and she would edit it and send it back
Yeah.
to me. And we had this iterative process where it was a back and forth. And we'd do that about once every 3 weeks. And it took about a year to get through the whole book. And it was honestly one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I do believe that deep down I'm a very creative person, but until now, I've never really found that creative outlet. So
Yeah.
I do really enjoy writing. I do. Right now I just feel like I need to take a break and
Well, you're a
in
busy guy. You have a lot of other things going on. When you told me that you wrote the book, I was like, wow, okay, like this guy's grinding.
It took a lot of discipline. I would get up at 6 in the morning and often, write before work.
Mhm.
And, that was sort of on top of a very busy day job, as you're alluding to. I do have another book idea in mind, and I'll actually share it with you because I love your feedback on it. But I was handed a manuscript by Maria Rodale, the
Mhm.
daughter of Robert Rodale. Just as I was finishing up this book, she handed me this literally like a 300-page, single-sided, spiral-bound
Yeah.
manuscript of a book her father wrote
Oh,
that
wow.
was never published. And he
Interesting.
was killed tragically in Russia in 1990, and
Yeah.
he had written a book and it was never published. It was called R Force, the letter R, and it was about regeneration. And it was his perspective on what regenerative farming can teach us about business and how to
Yeah.
regenerate entities and organizations. And as you know, the Rodale Institute has gone through its own regeneration of sorts. And I really related to what he wrote in this book. And so I've had this idea for getting that book written and out into the world,
Mhm.
but through my lens today.
Yeah.
So it's like taking his words and marrying it together with my experiences of running this organization today. So I'm playing around with that right now. We'll see.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would go right hand in hand. I mean, this book is very much about, it's almost like a philosophical kind of journey, a philosophical book about you, but also about the journey of the regenerative organic movement. And that feels like that would be a really great complement to, because every business, every farm is a small business, and there's an economic element to it
That's right.
beyond just stewarding the land and buying land and managing land and doing all of those kind of like literally on the ground systems and processes and deep skill sets and wisdom. But there's also a business side of it and an economic side of it, and understanding how to navigate that and how that fits into the broader economy. So yeah, that'll be cool. I'll be excited to check it out.
Thank you. So back to this book, you said it, Ben, and I'm really honored and humbled that you characterized the book the way that you did, because I attempted to write a book about a movement from my vantage point. I attempted to tell people what I see by coming to work at this farm every day. So this farm has become a bit of a metaphor for the farm, and the
Yeah.
farm is a metaphor that, all of us are called to be farmers. I
Yeah.
believe that we're living at a really unique time in human history where we are all being invited back to a right relationship with the earth. We have lost our connection to the earth as we've moved further and further away from it. I've learned through writing this book that less than 100 years ago, almost 100% of the human population was involved in farming at some
Yeah.
level on a daily basis. But today, less than 1% of our population produces food.
Yeah.
And then, so that's not right. We've lost our connection. And so the book is my attempt to invite people back into a new relationship with a new old relationship with the
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but I think around the turn of the 20th century, um, around 50% of people were self-employed in some way.
Mm.
And obviously there's like the Industrial Revolution and then also kind of like the knowledge worker revolution that affected that and took more people from their homes or their businesses and kind of put them in an office or things like that, a factory or an office. But what strikes me about that, if my statistic is correct, is that most of those would have been in some way, shape, or form involved in an agricultural enterprise.
Yeah.
And that is, we've moved from many diverse businesses to highly consolidated businesses in the agricultural industry. And that obviously that creates the economics of efficiency and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily always lend itself well to the management of the land. And so the regenerative ag movement typically is leaning more towards smaller businesses, smaller land base, smaller management, and generating higher returns off of smaller acreage. So we do need to get back to that a little bit more. But there's so many challenges, and that was something one of the characters, well, not characters, I guess a real person in your book is a guy named Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And he was you only talk about him for a couple pages, but he is an interesting character to me and caught my attention, and it ties into things that I think about a lot as someone who has been a farmer for 16 years and who definitely came at it from a very progressive kind of hippy
Mm.
dippy, kind of perspective, and then evolved over the years to understanding, oh man, this is a business. We really need to like take this seriously. And then doing land investing myself and things like that in real estate, I've come to see that there are a lot more people that we need as part of the regenerative agricultural movement, as part of the organic agriculture movement. And Dave is a character that you um, interact with in the book, and you paint him as a little bit more right wing, maybe, that's what I'm reading into it. And that's not a typical character in the organic farming movement. But he's passionate about organic agriculture and the way he runs his farm and manages his land. And he's thinking really seriously about how he's going to pass the farm on to the next generation and how he can empower them to take on that responsibility and how they can be successful doing that. And I think that that's just a good reminder to the organic movement and the regenerative ag movement that we do need a diversity of voices, and that there are a lot of other people out there that are maybe not stereotypically in that progressive side of the political spectrum or whatever, ideologically speaking. And we need to be able to bridge that and bring those people into the fold, not change them. We're not trying to change people, make people into something that they're not, but show them and empower them to be able to take advantage of some of these amazing land management techniques and also the economic benefits.
So I'm so moved by the fact that you were able to interpret that chapter through the lens in which you did. You're pretty much spot on. I was attempting to leave his political affiliation open to interpretation, yeah. But I have been constantly surprised through my work here at Rodale by the kind of people that the organic movement attracts. And what I have come to learn is that this movement is actually for everyone. And I have seen time and time again through my work, people that one would stereotypically least expect to be as passionate and involved in the movement, but actually are. So yeah. I've actually sat in this parking lot that I'm pointing to right now on one of our field days a couple of years ago, and Secretary Vilsack came to give a keynote, and he was part of the Biden administration, and there was two dyed-in-the-wool organic industry leaders sitting in the front row next to each other. One of them was one of the most successful founders and entrepreneurs in the organic food industry ever. He built a very successful organic dairy brand, and he was sitting directly next to another organic founder and CEO of one of the most successful organic food companies in our state. They could not be more diametrically opposed in their political views, but yet they were sitting side by side, smiling, beaming from ear to ear with pride about being here at Rodale, representing the organic movement, because they both agreed on the values of what the movement represents. And so my experience has been, Ben, that this movement is for everyone. And I often like to say that if you're a 38-year-old tech entrepreneur living in the San Francisco area and you want to walk into a Whole Foods after work and purchase a certified organic chicken to get your protein or to make for your family that evening for dinner, that the farmer who produced that chicken was relying on people very different than that consumer to produce the grain, to feed that chicken, to put that chicken on the shelf in downtown San Francisco. Do you see what I mean? Is like food seems to be the thing that unites all of us. If we all want health, if we all want to live more sustainably on the earth, if we all want a better food system, it's going to take us looking beyond our polarizations in order to connect in the soil, metaphorically and figuratively.
Yeah. No, it is profound.
How did you know he was going to plow that field?
I didn't know. I looked at I thought that the field looked a little dry, and I saw him plowing that field up there, and I figured that he would probably be down here too.
I'm sitting with a pro farmer right here.
Yeah. For those who are listening, there's a tractor plowing a field behind us, getting ready do you know what they're planting in those fields?
No, I don't.
Maybe
my guess is
hemp or
I was going to guess
something like that for
some.
Are we
planting corn yet?
It's probably time to plant corn soon.
Either that or some cover crop where they just took those trees out up
Yeah.
there.
Cool. So one of the things that I thought that you might be able to speak to a little bit, and we've already touched on it a little bit, is a recent USDA report that was a study that it concluded, I guess, in 2024, but it had to do with land ownership of agricultural land in the US. And the statistic was that there's over 2 million landowners rented out 348 million acres of farmland. And of these acres, 79% are owned by non-farming landowners. What's your response to that? Like, is that a problem that we have non-farmers owning such an enormous portion of land in the US? And what are the implications of that?
Yeah. Well, and I think you and Kara have probably learned this lesson firsthand through your 16-year journey as farmers. But agriculture is a very, very capital intensive business. It takes a lot of money just to get into the game, right? To purchase equipment, to get access to land, or certainly even to buy land, or, dare I say, even to own a farm. Like these,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of capital. If you're graduating from medical school, likely you're going to have between $500,000 and $750,000 in debt, but you can land a job that probably pays that on an annual basis right out of the gate. If you're a farmer graduating from ag school and you want to be a first generation farmer, you're not handed any land, any equipment, or you have no access to any infrastructure. How do you graduate with debt from university, but then also take on, seven figures in more debt just to get to the point where you could go to work?
Yeah.
So that the system's flawed in that sense.
The other statistic that is profound, kind of off of what you were just saying, is that this age, so the average age of these landlords is 69 years old. So that portion, 79% of that rented farmland is owned by 69-year-olds. So there's, that land is going to change hands soon.
Yeah.
We don't live forever, but the land is still here, and someone needs to own it. Someone needs to manage it. And that's an enormous challenge, as you were just saying, for someone who is aspiring to be a farmer, or even already is a farmer and still has to be able to afford to buy land.
Yeah, so this is one of the greatest barriers to getting young people into farming. What I see here through my work every day is many, many more young people that are coming to Rodale to train to be organic farmers. We house one of the most reputable organic farmer training programs in the nation, and that program has a cohort of students, and we end up having to select a small amount of students that our program can support through a full growing season. It's a very, very profound program that we're now working to build out an online platform so that we could scale it and we can make it available to many, many more people. But what we learn is when these students graduate, the greatest barrier that prevents them from building a successful farm business is getting access to land. So this is something that we have to solve for. There are programs out there. There's great partners and programs that are beginning to create access. You yourself, I think, are very involved in getting new and aspiring farmers onto land. Rodale partners with other entities. And what I've been really encouraged by is that we meet a lot of families through our work here at Rodale that own large, significant amounts of farmland.
Yeah.
And we're getting calls from these families that are saying, hey, listen, we've got a farmer on our land right now that's farming conventionally. We don't want chemicals sprayed on our land anymore. It's ending up in our drinking water. It's polluting our community. We would love to put a Rodale trained farmer on our land. And so we're beginning to work on mechanisms to bridge students to land. And as this conversation around organic agriculture scales and evolves, people are rethinking how their land is managed, and they're opening up their land to new and aspiring farmers.
Yeah. Do you find that those families that own land also see that if it's transitioned to organic, that it will be more valuable or more desirable, or maybe yield better returns from like rent, we'll say?
And not only are individual families coming to that discovery on their own, but there's businesses that are now scaling around acquiring land, placing farmers on that land to farm it organically and or to transition it. And I think of companies like Iroquois Valley, which is a real estate investment trust. Their whole goal is to buy conventional farmland, place organic farmers on that land, give those farmers a pathway to ownership, but also build the asset itself. And
Yeah.
I'm personally an investor in that fund, a very modest investment, but I believe deeply in entities like Iroquois Valley that are starting to scale.
Yeah, that's a really interesting progressive mindset from an investor standpoint, that if you're going to invest in land, if you're a REIT or an investment fund, you want, just from the fundamental mechanics of financial stewardship, you want your investment to grow in value and you want to steward it as best you can. So, yeah, you're assuming that the land will grow in value over time, just as a passive investment, essentially. You're obviously getting short-term income from cash flow through rentals or things like that. But also, organic management or regenerative management has a strong argument as a prime option for how that land is managed,
Mhm.
because the whole center crux of that is that you're trying to build the soil and build more rich, resilient soil. So you're actually enhancing, once that boils all the way down to like the profit and loss statement, you're actually adding value
Yeah.
by enhancing that soil. That's a really cool way of thinking about it. So another thing I wanted to ask you about, because we were talking at the beginning about different podcasts that we listen to, and one of the things on everybody's mind is AI, and how is that going to affect different industries. I think that the assumption would be that agriculture is somewhat, aside from robots being out there in the field, driving tractors and, managing crops, which I'm sure will be a thing someday. What are you seeing from a high level? As what are kind of conversations are you around in your travels and meeting with different organizations and companies? How is AI on the radar when it comes to agriculture?
I would start by saying that Rodale Institute has just authored its first ever 5-year strategic plan, which we'll be
Hmm.
publishing later this summer. And within that plan, one of the 5 pillars is a focus on technology.
Yeah.
So Rodale, as an organization, is really going to double down on what role technology plays in scaling regenerative organic agriculture. That also means that we, as a scientific community, need to really ground truth and test what is going to advance soil health and human health and ultimately planetary health. So there's already been pretty big innovations in robotics and in AI, as well as in other, technologies that are coming online that are purporting to be safe in organic agriculture for weed management, for
Yeah.
example. Things like the weed zapper. That's a piece of technology that uses a flame to go between the crop rows to eliminate weeds. And we have one here and we use that, but we wonder, and we're testing through our science, how does an electric current zapping a weed or even a propane flame affect the health of the soil? So we are asking those kind of questions and attempting to answer through our scientific research. In the world of AI, where I see the most opportunity is helping a farm to manage their business. Because as farmers, we love the land. We love being out on the land. We want to be in the field. We want to be involved in the work itself, but someone has to run the business of the farm. And if we can use AI technologies to handle billing and bookkeeping and marketing and inventory and accounting and all the facets of running a farm that no one wants to talk about, but are so essential, which you have
Yeah.
learned, if we can use technologies to eliminate headcount in those areas, it would allow young, new and establishing farmers to invest more of their revenue into the farming operation itself. So I look at AI as an enabler and as a means of scale and
Yeah.
not so much as a taking over. It's
Yeah,
more of an
for sure.
augmenter.
No, and that's a really good point, that it actually can help support operations. It can help support and make more efficient and allow a farmer who, is scraping by and struggling to, they don't want to farm till the day they die, most likely. So they want to have some kind of a retirement. They want to have some kind of an investment that is not just in their land or in their business. It's pretty hard to sell a farm business. It's usually typically something that relies very heavily on one or a couple select individuals to run and to operate on a daily basis. So they're not always there isn't a payout at the end of the road where you can just unload your farm business and sell it to someone else. It's possible in some cases, but so you have your land. If you can afford to buy it and invest in it, that's a potential retirement income. And then otherwise you have to be saving, and that's always challenging. So creating more efficiencies and being able to tease out profitability and those kind of things and not have to pay maybe as such a higher rate to an accountant or a bookkeeper or somebody doing marketing or those kind of things that can enhance the business and create better profit margins for the business. So how do we encourage farmers who are afraid of that to embrace it and be able to leverage it in whatever way they can?
Yeah. Well, I myself, I would say I'm not exactly an early adopter. I'm just now starting to dabble with some AI tools that I can leverage as a CEO to make my day more productive and efficient and to get me focused on the right thing. So I'm just myself exploring, and I think we're all sort of feeling our way through this moment. There's some great organizations like Good Roots, who I know that
Yeah.
are offering great consulting services to farm businesses, and I think companies like Good Roots can teach regenerative organic farmers how to use AI responsibly as a means to scale and improve efficiency of their
It's just a
business.
fundamental amplifier of tools that we already have
Yeah.
that we can leverage better, or it can also help farmers adopt those tools more quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was most of what I wanted to hit on. And what any other kind of parting words that you have? Or
What continues to drive you and Kara in your role within this movement? You both have been such leaders in our community around growing healthy food. You have developed what I notice as a loyal following of customers that
Mhm.
love your products, that believe in your brand. What fuels you today, Ben? And how do you keep your
Yeah,
passion hot
well,
during this season of your
I
life?
think that if you asked me or Kara, you would get very different answers. I am someone who's really interested in learning and growing and always improving. I'm always thinking about new things, new ideas, new opportunities. But I think that I've learned over the years that the best way to do that, I mean, I think everybody has a little bit of that to a certain degree. You want to level up, you want to get better at what you're doing, you want maybe make more money, there's always more, and that's just the human condition. So you have to find balance with that. But what I've learned over the years and that I try to always do is look at I don't really think about the past very much. I'm always thinking about the future.
Same.
Maybe to a detriment.
Yeah.
Need to be thinking about the present more. When I think about ideas and opportunities, I'm trying to retrain myself to think more about what I have done and where I've been and what skills and knowledge and network and community I have that I can leverage and draw on to
Hmm.
propel myself forward into these new ideas and new opportunities. And I mean, that's what brings me here today is to I developed such an amazing network and community in agriculture. And as I'm venturing more into real estate and learning and trying to help farmers and specialize in agricultural type real estate, it makes the most sense for me to tease out some of the community and network that we already have
Hmm.
and have these kind of conversations. And, obviously this will hopefully help people think about the way that they're managing their land and the way that they're investing in land and the way they're running their agricultural businesses. And I hope that it can be a benefit and an inspiration and that there's a broader arc here that, I can do with these podcasts to help educate and empower people who want to engage with these kind of topics. And it's fun
Right
to
on.
be here, have
Yeah.
these conversations. We have these kind of conversations organically. It's good to get it on record here
Yeah.
and share it with the world.
Thank you for everything you're doing, Ben. Thanks for
Yeah.
your commitment to the movement and for helping to encourage more people to become farmers.
Yeah, you too.
And yeah, I feel like you and I are partners in this movement together, and grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation today and get the word out about what we're both
Yeah.
doing.
And where can people find your book?
Yeah,
The
you can.
Farm is Here.
The book is available at every major bookseller: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Sparks. A quick Google search of "The Farm Is Here" should land you to a place to buy
Yeah.
it. No
And
problem.
it's on Audible as well.
It is also on Audible.
I listened to it.
Yeah?
I didn't actually physically read it.
I have to say that recording the audiobook was my favorite part of the whole process. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you did a good job. I always love it when the actual author reads the book.
Yeah.
It feels like more authentic, and you did a good job with that.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, cool. All right, brother. Well,
thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good one.